All right, my name is Sumit Agarwal. Hello, everyone. I'm co-founder and managing partner of Finhive. I will be the moderator for this event. Thank you all for joining the discussion today, and a special thanks to our guest, Peter Donahoe, for being here. We have held multiple sessions of the Women in Investing series of classes. I believe we have made progress in building our community, and we are very pleased to be presenting this timely discussion to the group. As the title of the panel states, our focus in today's discussion will be on learning and how to find and evaluate a financial advisor and how to work with him or her once you have one. At the end of this discussion, we're hoping you all will get useful advice and leave with a sense of how to engage with your financial advisors more productively. With that, let me briefly introduce our guest, Peter Donahoe. Peter provides holistic wealth management services that address the full spectrum of his clients' financial concerns, including investments, life insurance, family finances, retirement, and estate planning. Peter has 20 years of investment experience helping individuals, families, and businesses pursue their financial goals. I will now invite Peter for his opening comments. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Amit. Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Donahoe. I'm a financial consultant at Webster Investments, and my broker-dealer is LPL Financial. One disclosure, today I'm going to be voicing my opinions. These are not necessarily the opinions or policies of Webster Investments or LPL Financial. None of the things that I speak about today are meant to be investment advice from LPL Financial. So to get started, a little bit about myself. I've been in the business, started in 1992. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself today, and the goal here is these are questions or information you are completely within your rights to ask either a new financial advisor you're considering or your current financial advisor. So asking about, where they've worked. I started in 1992 at Brown Brothers Harriman. I worked at Bear Stearns, Morgan Stanley, PRW Wealth Management, and now I've been at Webster Investments for about 4 years. So when you're talking to advisors, these are questions you can ask.
So Peter, let me jump in real quick, sorry. I want to just say that I think first, let's kind of roll back a little bit. And I guess first things first, let's say, why should one consider getting a financial advisor? So with all the convenient online tools, isn't investing something that investors can do on their own?
Yes. So a lot of people on this call probably do some of their own investing. Now, I know people who invest $5,000 in Tesla stock because that's what they do. And when you're considering, do I even need a financial consultant, financial advisor? It really comes down to time. Do you have the time to do it right, to do it correctly? Are you doing the research and investing appropriately, or are you throwing a dart at the Wall Street Journal and saying, that's what I'm going to buy today? There's different ways to invest. But number one is time. Do you have the time? And do you have the skill set? So investing is one of those things that people feel like, sometimes they feel like they have an expertise in, and some people do. There's an absolute do-it-yourself grouping of people that can do it themselves. But the clients who hire a financial advisor either don't want to take the time or don't have the expertise. There are some online options. You can look at robo-advisors. You can do a lot of this yourself. It's just, do you have the time and do you have the expertise and do you have the will? Do you want to do this? A lot of my clients do both their own investing and they use an advisor for some of their assets. And that way they get somewhat the best of both worlds in doing it themselves and doing it with a professional.
Okay, so that makes sense. So I guess you're recommending that, or what you have seen in your clients, that they it's not 100% of one or the other. There is a balance that they can strike between some keeping it themselves and then some of that handing it off to a professional.
One thing I'll add to that too is when someone walks into my office, a lot of times something has changed. They had a baby, they got a divorce, they had a death in the family, they're retiring. You know, if life is just going on normal and there's no upheaval or change, a lot of do-it-yourselfers don't always see a huge need to go see a financial advisor because everything's the boat's going along fine.
Right.
It's when the waves get a little rocky, that's usually when I get the phone call or the request for an appointment.
Okay, great. So I guess let's roll into like what should investors look for in an advisor before engaging them in terms of qualifications or fit? What are your thoughts on that?
So one thing, first tool or homework or whatever is something called the FINRA website. FINRA is the regulator agency, and they have something called Broker Check. So if you Google FINRA Broker Check, it will take you to the website, and that's your first line of due diligence, in my opinion, is if you either have an advisor or you've met someone who you are considering to be an advisor, I would go to that website and look them up. I'm in there. Any licensed registered rep you should be able to find in there. Sometimes if you're looking for John Smith, you might want to get his middle name because there's going to be a lot of John Smiths. And just read it. That shows where I've worked. It shows complaints. It shows bankruptcies. It shows issues. That's sort of my permanent record. One of the questions clients ask me when they look at it is, wow, from 2000 to 2008, you worked at a lot of different companies. Why did you jump around so much? I didn't. I worked at one company for 7 years, but they changed broker dealers. So on the website, it looks like I, bounced around. But that is my number one suggestion is the FINRA Broker Check when you are doing due diligence.
Okay.
And others are sort of, there's no science, huge science around this. Talk to friends and family. People do business with people who are competent, that they like, and they trust. And, when someone has met me once, twice, 3 times, they don't quite trust me right away. That's not human nature. But you're doing the due diligence when you're meeting with an advisor, trying to figure out if they're competent, if you like them, and if you trust them.
Awesome. Thank you. Sanjay, if you have a minute, can you put the broker check link on the chat? We can just share that with everyone that Peter just mentioned.
Yeah, I think when I try to do that, I can only do it privately to you. I think the setting is not allowing me to send it to anybody else. But we can send it after this thing.
Okay. All right. Good. All right, Peter. So what do advisors look for in clients before taking them on? If you could talk a little bit about account sizes, how does that fit into the picture here?
Well, like anyone who runs a business, I'm sure there's people on this call who work somewhere or some maybe have your own business. We usually look for the same things that you look for. People who respect us, answer our phone calls. Those are some of the soft and fuzzy parts. But then there's the hard numbers. Is this a profitable relationship? If I bring a client on, I have to be able to make profit. Inevitably, and when you're thinking of should I hire a financial advisor, just remember that it's almost a certainty that if you hire an advisor, you're going to pay more than doing it yourself. Just like if you're, going to do your own, construction work, if you hire someone, it's going to cost more. But for myself, I'm looking is the person a good fit from a soft and fuzzy side? Do they respect me and do they want to work with me? And then from a financial side, is this a profitable relationship? And it has to be, otherwise it doesn't work.
Awesome. Okay. So if you could talk a little bit about the fee structures that advisors have and how do these differ? So fee often comes up in our conversations and classes. I think part of the mystery behind that is, how do I know what they're charging? And if, you know, there are fees that are built in from the advisor side as well as the fund side. So help us peel the onion a little bit.
So let's try to clear the air, because this is a very murky topic. I'll start with a high view, and then I'll get a little deeper. And Sumit, you sort of monitor me, because I can talk about this for a long time. So
sure.
The conventional wisdom is typically there's a couple of different ways that financial advisors can get paid. Number one is a commission. So that's a fee for a transaction. Now, they take on a lot of different types of looks, but for example, if you open up an account and you want to buy shares of Apple, I can charge you a commission for that trade. I think everyone understands that. If you ever watched the movie Wall Street, or, you know, everyone's somewhat familiar with that. If you buy a mutual fund in a brokerage account, there can be an upfront sales charge. So there's some products that only allow commission options, like you know, life insurance. That's a commission product. A lot of times annuities will have commissions. So that's door number one, and that was big in the 90s. It's getting a little less so now. Where most advisors seem to be centered is on the fee-based side. That's for what we call AUM fees, assets under management. So, for example, if someone you know, comes into my office and says, okay, here's $1 million, and I charge them 1% per year, that's going to be on the value of the assets under management. 1% is the charge. Mm-hmm. If the asset increases in value to $2 million, I'm getting 1% of $2 million. If the asset falls to $500,000, I'm getting 1% of $500,000. That is a typical AUM fee-based engagement. And then there's something that's actually becoming more popular, it seems, in my opinion, is the fee for advice or fee for service. Mm. So some people don't want to bring the money to the advisor. They want to do it themselves, but they want the advisor to give them help on topics that they may not have expertise on, like, say, you know, estate taxes or retirement planning or with Social Security, something like that. So at that point, it's not the same, but I liken it to like how a lawyer charges fees. He basically says, I'm going to meet with you 3 times. We're going to spend 10 hours together, and I'm going to charge you $2,000. And at the end of that, you know, take my advice and go. And that's maybe the end of our relationship. That is coming up a lot more, I think, because of some of the online access to advice that people have, that they may feel, I don't really need to have every penny with the advisor, so I'll just do a fee for service. Is that clear?
Yeah, I think that gives everyone an option for sort of all you can eat or a la carte, right? Is that a good analogy? Okay, good.
Correct.
I think,
correct.
Yeah. Awesome. So once someone has engaged an advisor, what should the clients expect from their advisors in terms of client service? Now, obviously, we're talking about the all you can have, right? So a la carte, as you mentioned, it's, you know, as you pay per service. If this is an engagement, so if you can share how often they should meet, what's the usual cadence?
Right. So that should ideally be at least outlined at the start of the relationship. So when you first talk to a client, you talk about, okay, what's the process, client? You know, what are we going to go through? Well, we're going to take a look at, you know, what's your condition? What's the situation? Is it you want huge financial planning, or do you just have one little issue to discuss? Define the scope of our relationship. And then what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to save on taxes? Are you trying to plan for retirement? Do you need asset allocation help? What are the goals? Or it might be all of them. And then come up with alternatives. So this is a process. With a new engagement, this is a process. So you're setting the scope of the engagement. And then once we decide this is a good fit for both of us, you are going to hire me, and I'm going to, in effect, hire you as my client. We're going to work together. How does this work? How often do we review your portfolio? How often do we talk about your portfolio? When will I proactively call you? How often will we meet? And that is all adjustable. Now, that should happen early on. It should be a service model that you have a conversation. Now, if I say to you, or if a financial advisor says to you, yes, I'm going to call you every month, and they don't, that's a decision point for you. If your, landscaper says, I'm going to be there next Tuesday to mow the lawn, and he doesn't come, then you might look for another landscaper. So the service model should be outlined at the start. But, Sumit, to your point, you can't outline everything. You can't outline every product and service and thing that you're going to talk about with a financial advisor. So that's why a regular check-in, a typical check-in call is usually warranted. And I try to do them quarterly. But the service model, the service matrix should be detailed at the start of the engagement and then redetailed at strategy review meetings. So, all right, here's what the model looked like. Here's what the service was. Is there anything I'm doing well that you'd like to see more of? Is there anything I'm doing less of or not enough that you'd like to see more of? And let's adjust, client. Now, if a client says to me, hey, yeah, you're charging me 1% on my $1 million, but I want phone calls every week, I want meetings 3 times a month, et cetera, then we're going to have a conversation about fee structure.
Right.
But those are conversations that should happen all the time, especially early on when you're trying to figure out, am I getting good service? Am I getting value? Because in my experience, and there's some research around this, clients don't mind paying fees as long as they feel like they're getting value for their money.
Right, that's really good advice. So in terms of the meeting itself, how do you suggest, or what do you suggest your clients, how should they prepare for the meeting? Because oftentimes I say, maybe compare it to a doctor, right? You go there and you say, these are the things I'm going to talk to my doctor about. And then I come out and I say, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. So thanks to telehealth, now we can email our doctors.
Right.
Is there something that you recommend, or is there some paperwork that needs to be filled out to prepare for it?
Well, what I typically recommend to people is come with questions, come with statements. So like going to your doctor, you have an issue with your knee. I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be, but if I were like a doctor, if you said, I have an issue with my estate planning, I haven't done a will, and you're coming to meet with me, we're having our review meeting to talk about your portfolio and your retirement, but you have a question about your estate plan, come with those questions. Let's talk about that. I have an issue with the performance of one of my funds. It seems to be down. Bring that question. Have questions, have a list of questions, bring statements of things you want to talk about. Hey, I have this whole life cash value life insurance policy that I bought 30 years ago when I was 28 years old. I don't really understand it. Bring the statement. That's how I recommend clients come to meetings, is come with questions, come with what you want to talk about. I work for my clients. So, they're meant to ask me questions. That's how it's supposed to work. And I'm supposed to, when I do check-ins, I ask clients about, at first meetings, I ask about estate planning, about life insurance, about nursing home care, about 401ks, all that stuff. I do it for two reasons. Well, more than two reasons, but really I want to get to know the client. Mm-hmm. And number two is I have a lot of services I can provide, and I get paid for those services. So guess what? If I never ask you about your planning, I'm never gonna, give you those services. So back to your point, how should clients prepare for these meetings? Have questions and fire away, fire at will, And if I don't know the answer, I feel like one of the best skill sets a financial advisor can have is being able to say, I don't know, I've got to ask someone else. Because if I don't know the answer, I should tell you that. And I should say, let's find someone who does.
Right. I think, so that's really good point, because that starts, you build trust with that, right? You're not like trying to wing stuff or, avoid the question. You're just saying, this is how it is, and let's go with that. And we often start with, all of our workshops start with the building blocks of personal finance. So we say, okay, today we're talking about budgeting, but that's a really small topic, or investing in your entire, environment of your financial health. So it's one of the blocks. These are the others that, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes they all happen simultaneously. So they have to be cared for or taken care of. So someone can't, especially I think with the pandemic, estate planning has really, people have woken up to realize they don't have it. So it's one of the main topics of, folks are seeking out and getting their kind of house in order, making sure that that's done.
When you say those terms, I fully recognize that when someone says estate planning, that is a term that not everyone completely understands. Just like investing, some people consider buying a racehorse as investing, and it could be buying art can be investing. Estate planning is a very vague topic, and whenever it's vague, it tends to scare people. So you need I shouldn't say you need, one would benefit from an advisor who can take a complicated topic and basically break it down into digestible bites so that it's not as intimidating to people.
That's sound advice. Thank you for pointing that out. So in terms of, so we talked about seeking an advisor, having the relationship. How do you see the clients, how should they evaluate their advisor? What should they do if they don't feel their needs are being met? And I ask that question because oftentimes we hear in our conversations that, oh, I haven't talked to my advisor in a few years. So, because I don't know, the cadence or how often I should meet, or I should even go and change somebody I've had for years. So what are your thoughts on evaluating their advisor?
So this is my opinion, but I've done a lot of research on this topic because guess what? I don't want to lose clients. And most people feel like, well, the reason why you might lose a client is your portfolio doesn't do well. That is not the number one reason why people move advisors or change advisors. It tends to be communication. I never hear from him. Remember, people are usually, I don't mind paying a plumber $2,000 if I feel like he's taken care, I've gotten good value for the work he did. Same with advisors. And if you haven't heard from your advisor in 2 years, especially going through a global pandemic, well, that is probably something that you might want to address. So, if you have a choice between, oh, my advisor performed 1% below the S&P 500, which was our agreed upon benchmark. I'll talk about benchmarks in a second. But let's say for this last year, he was 1% below, but he called me every month and he talked about the portfolio and explained why we're down 1% below the S&P. And I believed him and I felt it was a good conversation. You're much less likely to move on from that advisor than an advisor who outperformed the S&P by 1% and you never heard a word from. That is typically how my opinion on how it works. So when you're evaluating an advisor, I feel like one of the number one things is communication. Is there a line of communication? Are you talking to the advisor? Are you getting value? Definitely measure on performance and find an agreed upon benchmark. And find an appropriate benchmark. Do you know what an appropriate benchmark should be? So I'll give you an example. If you're an aggressive investor and you're invested all in United States large cap blended stocks or mutual funds, then the S&P 500 is probably a pretty good benchmark because that's what the S&P 500 invests in. So when you're measuring your advisor's performance, a good benchmark might be the S&P 500 versus someone who has 60% stocks and 40% bonds and maybe some international and some small cap and a mid cap. The S&P is probably not the perfect benchmark for that advisor in either direction. So these are some of the tools of communication, performance, and are you getting value? Does your advisor proactively call you? Or do you always have to call them and it's 3 days before they call you back? These are all decision points on whether or not you're getting value. Performance is important. It absolutely is. If I'm 5% below my benchmark, I better have a good explanation as to why that happened. It has happened, and one of the reasons it happened to one of my clients is they bought ExxonMobil, their idea, and that will, if ExxonMobil doesn't do very well, that's going to hinder performance. I hope I addressed that question.
You definitely did. Thank you. Yeah, okay. And I also want to add that oftentimes we recommend that clients log into their brokerage accounts. You don't have to wait for an advisor to tell you how your fund is doing or how your investment is doing. These types of analytical dashboards are available and they are much easier now than they used to be. They're right there on your screen because those are the things that brokerage firms, even online ones, are highlighting. So nothing that the broker or the advisor is doing is behind the scenes. Everything is right there. You can go get it and maybe use that as a reason to call them up and say, hey, I noticed my fund is down 5% and the market was up 12%. So, let's maybe rebalance it a little bit. So, or have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm going to do a time check here, and I think I have a lot more questions, but we also want to invite our audience to ask questions. So I am going to actually pause the recording here and invite our audience if anybody has any questions, and we can go from there. Peter, this has been really informative discussion. We've covered a number of important issues today, ranging from advisor qualifications and fees to performance and quarterly meetings. We also talked about fiduciary relationship and a client fit. On behalf of Finhive, I would like to thank you for taking the time on a Saturday morning to share your experience with us. Based on our conversation, it's clear that you're all deeply committed to the financial success of your clients. Thank you for sharing your visions on how to create and maintain a successful investment portfolio in partnership with financial advisors. And thank you to our audience members for joining this discussion. We hope you all will take part in our classes and other events in the future. I urge you all to consider taking the time to execute on any action items that you have noted from today's discussion. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that process. I'll send Peter's information after today, and should anyone want to reach out to him directly, With that, we'll close the discussion and wish you all a good rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great.
very much.
Peter.